So, are y'all ready to complete the book of John? Anyone? Anyone? So, as I said that, some of you are rolling your eyes going, dear God, please. Y'all, here's the thing. If you've been with us, we've been walking through the entire story of Jesus. To be captivated, to be captured by who Christ is, to understand more fully who He is and understand who we are to Him. I hope that it's been refreshing. I hope it's been rejuvenating. I hope it's been challenging. I hope that it's brought you to a place of wanting to know more about Jesus. But more than anything, I hope it's brought you to the place of believing that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and in Him you might have life. It's a whole point and purpose that John wrote the book of John. And so we're gonna finish it up today, I promise you. And if we had a bulletin, you would see there's a lot of scripture that we're going to walk through today. I was talking to the people in the back, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how are we going to get through all this?" We're going to get through it all, because I believe that it's time to not close the book of John, but it's time for us to move on. But I don't want us to look past what we're going to look at today, because I think it's essential for who we are and what we're called to be. And so we're going to walk through chapter 21, but before we do that, I want to step back into where we ended last week, because it's really important for us to grab this story of Thomas, because I think it's very relevant to where our culture is today. So we're going to look at John 20, beginning in verse 24. This is what the Word of God says. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the marks of the nails, and place my finger in the marks of the nails, and place my hand into his side, I will never believe." Y'all, I think there are a lot of people in our culture who stand in this place, who stand in the place of, "I'm just never going to believe. I'm just not going to believe." There's this movement right now. I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube or heard about it, but there's this movement right now. It's called deconstructing your faith. And it's a group of people that at one time believed in Jesus, and now, because they've gotten wiser or deconstructed their faith, they don't believe in Jesus anymore. And then they make videos about it and put it on YouTube and tell everybody why they're doing this. And so there's a significant group of people in our culture right now who are deconstructing their faith or have no faith at all. In fact, the statistics say that is increasing far quicker than it's ever increased in the history of as long as we've been taking these surveys. A deconstructing of your faith. And what you have is you have Thomas, one of the 12, who has walked with Jesus, seen Jesus do all these miraculous things, seen Jesus live out his life in a way that says that I am the Son of God. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And he talks about all these things. And so Thomas, the one who's seen all these things, is now at the place of saying, unless I put my hands in the nail prints, in the nail scars, or in his side, I will never believe. And I don't know if you're at that place, and I don't know if you're at that place online, but I just want to tell you that is an incredibly devastating place to be. Because here's what's true. If you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to believe in something. You're going to believe in someone. You're going to believe in something. There are people that say, well, that's not true because I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. You believe in something. You've placed your faith in something. There's not anyone in this world who doesn't live in a place of faith. And Thomas is at this place, and he's walked with Jesus. He has seen Jesus in action. He has lived with Jesus for 3 years, and yet Thomas is at this place. And what I want us to see is that Jesus meets us where we are. And so regardless of where you are in this journey with God, regardless of whether you've been walking with Jesus forever or it's a new journey for you, regardless of where you are in that, I just want you to know that Jesus meets you wherever you are, and we see that in this passage. So we go on beginning in verse 26. 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." If you were with us last week, that probably sounds real familiar, because that's the reason Jesus came, was to bring peace. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side." And this is what Jesus says to Thomas. "Do not disbelieve, but believe." And Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen? Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have believed." So what we have is we have the disciples in this space. Doors are locked again, and Jesus shows up again, miraculously shows up in this place, just as he has done previously. But what's intriguing to me is that Jesus comes into this space and he has this interaction with Thomas. It's as if Jesus shows up for Thomas. In the midst of his doubt, in the midst of his questions, in the midst of his wonderings, and we don't know why he's got the doubt. It's probably because a lot of emotion is in him. It's the fact that his Messiah has died, the one that he was placing all of his hope and faith in, has died in front of him. And so he's at this place of questioning, this place of doubt. And Jesus shows up. And Jesus said, "Okay, Thomas, you want to put your hands in my nail prints, my nail scars? You want to put your hand in my side? Here you go." And I don't know if you see it in the passage, but Thomas, we're not told that Thomas does that. We're not told that Thomas actually puts his hand into the scars. But we're told at that moment that Thomas realizes. And Thomas makes a profession that we don't see anywhere else in the story of Jesus with his disciples. And he says, "My Lord and my God." He acknowledges Jesus for who he is. He's in this midst of doubt. He's in this midst of questions. Jesus shows up, reveals himself in that space, meets Thomas precisely where Thomas needs to be met. And Thomas awakens to this reality of my Lord and my God. If you're living in a place of doubt, if you're living in a place of question, the one thing I want to say to you is this. Just as Jesus spoke to Thomas, I want to say this to you. Don't start disbelieving. Don't let that be your immediate go-to. Don't let your immediate go-to to become a moment of deconstruction. See, what Thomas has done is, even though he's questioning, even though he's doubting, do you know where he is in this story? He's with the disciples. He's with the ones who are followers of Jesus. He's with the ones who believed. And our tendency is, when we get to the place of questioning, when we get to the place of doubt, a lot of times we withdraw. We withdraw from the church. We withdraw from the people. We withdraw from Jesus. Which is really an odd thing to me. Always has been. And working with college students, I saw this all the time. College students would get somewhat disenfranchised or frustrated with God and frustrated with Jesus. And you know what they would do? They would completely disassociate with anyone who believed. What about you? If you're at a place of doubt, if you're at a place of questions, have you disassociated from the people of God? Have you disassociated from people that believe? And have you stepped away from Jesus? Because what Jesus wants to do is he wants to reveal himself to you, and he's going to meet you where you are. He does it with Peter as well. I mean, Peter's in a place of shame and a place of guilt because he has denied Jesus 3 times. And what does Jesus do? Jesus shows up. We're going to see this later on in chapter 21. Jesus wants you to know him. He wants you to know the truth of who he is. Now, he may not show up to you and say, okay, here are the scars, put your fingers here. He may reveal himself to you in a completely different way. But Jesus wants you to know him. But if you separate yourself from him, and if you move away from him, and if you completely disassociate yourself from other people who believe, then the possibility of you fully stepping away is strong. So if you're living in doubt right now, if you're living in a place of question, the first thing I want you to know is Jesus will meet you where you are. He will come find you. Don't start disbelieving. Y'all, faith does not eliminate doubt. Faith does not eliminate questions. Faith doesn't eliminate the fact that you're going to have questions about who God is, but it doesn't mean that you completely disregard who God is. It just means you have those questions, and then you bring those to God and say, God, I have this question about you. And there may be times in those questions that God's going to say, you're never going to know that until the end. Do you trust me? So Thomas is with the people of God. Jesus meets him there. Peter is with the people of God. Jesus meets him there. If you're at a place of doubt and a place of questions, I just want you to know that Jesus will meet you there, wherever you are. He does it all throughout his story, and he continues to do it in the lives of people. I had a conversation with someone 2 or 3 days ago. And they said, I got to the place where I was really frustrated with God because I didn't feel like God was showing up, and I didn't feel like that I was hearing from God, and didn't feel like that this was happening with God. And they said, all of a sudden, in an instant, 2 or 3 things happened that revealed that God was with me, that he hadn't stepped away from me, that he continued to be with me. I promise you that God will meet you where you are. He will step in those places of questions. He will step in those places of doubt. And so the last time I'm going to say this morning is this. If you're at a place of doubt, and I know sitting in this room and I know online, there's someone sitting in here who's at a place of doubt. And I just want to tell you, be honest with your doubt. It's okay to ask those questions. I think one of the greatest travesties of the church today is we had a period of time where people weren't allowed to ask the questions. They weren't allowed to say, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. I don't know if this makes any sense to me. God's not afraid of your questions. God's not afraid of your doubt. It doesn't catch him off guard. It doesn't surprise him. So be honest with your doubt. Don't start disbelieving. Continue to believe. Continue to place your faith in God. Continue to trust in him. And then as he reveals these things to you, your eyes and your mind and your heart are going to be opened because it's going to make complete sense of who God is. And the last thing is this. Don't pull away from the people of God. Don't pull away from the church. Don't pull away from people who believe. So Jesus meets them precisely where they are. And then we go into chapter 21, which most people believe that this is kind of an epilogue in the book of John. Because it seems like John finishes his book when he says, this is the reason we've written the book, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and you may have life in him. And it just seems like there's a closure there. But then there's an epilogue. There's this place where John says, okay, I'm gonna tie a couple of loose ends here. And so this is what he does in chapter 21. So what we have is this. In chapter 21, verse 1, this is what the Word of God says. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana, Galilee, and the sons of Zebedee, who are James and John, and 2 other of the disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. And they said to him, we'll go with you. And they went out and got into a boat, but that night they caught nothing. So what you have is you have the disciples who have gone, and they've gone to Galilee, and these are fishermen. This is what they do. They're going back to what's familiar. But they're not only going back to what's familiar, they're going back to what will allow them to live until Jesus comes, because Jesus told them back over in Matthew 28, I believe it's verse 7, Jesus told Mary to tell the disciples, listen, I'm going before you to Galilee, meet me there. So do you see that they're doing what Jesus asked them to do? And I've got to be honest with y'all. There was a time in my ministry where I used to slam the disciples. I'm like, why are you going fishing? Jesus told you you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to take the world. Why are you going fishing? And the reason they're going fishing is because that's what they do. It's what they're experts in. It's what they're familiar with. And they're doing what Jesus told them to do. Go to Galilee. So they went to Galilee. And Peter, being the great leader that he is, said, let's go fishing. Now, some of y'all are really excited about that. Some of y'all are fishermen or fisherwomen. You love to go fishing, and you're like, yeah, that makes complete sense. Why would they not do that? So they get in a boat, and they go fishing, and they catch nothing. You ever experienced that? You experience the frustration of that? That's why I don't fish anymore. Because I used to go fishing all the time. We caught nothing, and I'm like, this is stupid. Why do you do this? But they went out and they caught nothing. And then they hear this voice from the shore. Throw over on the other side. Throw over on the other side. And so that's what they do. They throw their nets on the other side, and their nets are filled, we're told, with 153 fish. You see, what happens is Jesus steps into their life, and Jesus provides for them. He does the same thing for you and I. He provides miraculously. He provides abundantly for them. And isn't it interesting that it's in the very place that they are experts, and it's in the very place that they have the most confidence, the most assurance of who they are, it's in that place that God steps in and says, no, I can provide for you so much more abundantly than how you can provide for yourself. Isn't that true in your life and my life? The places that we feel most secure, the places that we feel most stable, the places that we feel most capable are those places that if we would allow God, God would step in and provide abundantly for us. And that's what he does in this situation. And that's what he does for you and I. He provides abundantly. Do you allow God the space in your life to provide abundantly for you? Jesus said that the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but I came that you might have life and have it to the full. Do you give God the space in your life to provide abundantly? As you're continuing to do what he's asked you to do, because the disciples were doing what he asked them to do, as you continue to do that, then God steps in and says, let me pour out abundance for you. Do you allow and provide that space in your life to do that? But not only does he provide abundantly, but he provides intimately. They look over on the shore and they see all these fish in the nets. And of course, John says about himself, and we can't miss this. It says in verse 7, that disciple whom Jesus loved, therefore said to Peter, it is the Lord. Of course, John is the one to see that it's the Lord. John's the one to discern. And John's like, oh, it's Jesus. And Peter jumps in the water, swims about 100 yards to shore to be with Jesus. Because Jesus has provided abundantly. But then we also see that he provides in very intimate ways. When they get to the shore, what has Jesus done? He's cooked them a meal. They've got a beach barbecue going on because of Jesus. Did Jesus have to cook breakfast for them? No. He chose to. If you look back in the life of Jesus, do you know one of the things that happens in the life of Jesus? As he sits at the table with people, there's this intimate relationship. There's this restoration. There's this interaction between Jesus and the people. And Jesus is saying, I'm with you. It was about the people. It wasn't about the moment. It wasn't about the activity. It was about the people. One of the things that we have gotten so wrong in the church is we've made it about activity rather than about the people. Jesus made it about the people. And so he provided in this intimate way for them. And my question to you and I is, do we step into that intimacy with God? Do we keep God at a distance? Do we keep him over the shore? Do we keep him at a space of going, God, I believe you, I believe in you, but you're out there and I'm right here. And the reason we do that is because we want control of our life. And yet God is saying, no, I want to be close to you. I want to be intimate with you. The very reason I sent my son Jesus to die for you and to live among you is so that you would know me, see me, that we would have an intimate relationship. That's what he wants with you. That's what he wants with me. Do you live into that intimacy? Because that's what Jesus is revealing. This intimate relationship, this meal that he cooked for them. That's how God provides for you and I, abundantly and in this intimacy. Then after they get done eating, we see, and we talked about this several weeks ago, so we're not going to get into it in depth, but we talked about how Jesus restored Peter back into relationship with him. We talked about how Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. And so Jesus gave Peter 3 opportunities to declare his love back to him. And I just need to point this out. It's not bringing someone back into relationship with the church or the place, the facility, the institution. It's bringing Peter back into relationship with him, with Jesus. It's about a relationship. It's not about a religion, y'all. It's not about, I go to this church. It's not about, I attend a Methodist, Baptist, Catholic, Episcopalian, Lutheran, whatever. It's not about that. It's not about the denomination. It's about Jesus. It's about a relationship with Jesus. And he is restoring that relationship back with Peter. But something that's really interesting about this story that honestly I've never seen until I was studying for this is that previously in Luke 5, you can go back and read it. Luke 5, a very similar situation happens, and Jesus is out on the boat. The guys have been fishing all night. They're really tired, and Jesus said, hey, throw out to the other side. And they're like, we've been doing this all night, but we'll do it. Okay, we'll throw out to the other side. They throw out to the other side. They can't even, it begins to rip their nets. It's so full of fish. And they begin to try to bring it on. And this is what Peter says to Jesus. He says, depart from me, I am a sinful man. He feels so shamed and so guilty. And he said, Jesus, I can't even be in your presence. Do you see the transformation in Peter and his understanding of Jesus in this story? When John says, it's the Lord, Peter jumps in the water, swims about 100 yards. I don't know if you have swam 100 yards in a while, but that's not easy. I mean, I would hit about 20 yards and probably just start going. Somebody would have to rescue me. But he swims 100 yards. And you know why? Because he knows where his salvation is. He knows where his restoration is. He knows where the forgiveness is. It's found in Jesus. So he doesn't say, depart from me anymore. He says, I'm coming to you, Jesus. Is that your attitude toward Jesus? Knowing that he is the one that brings restoration. He is the one that brings completeness. He is the one who brings wholeness. He's the one who brings life to you. Because that's what Peter understands at this point. Y'all, the one thing I want us to know today is that Jesus restores. Jesus restores completely. And there's so much brokenness and so many people sitting in this room, online, out there in the world. There's so much brokenness. And I want to encourage you, seek help. Go to counseling. There's nothing bad about counseling. There's good things about counseling. Go seek someone else speaking into your life. Go find that. But the one thing I want to say is this: without Jesus, it will be incomplete. The full restoration, the complete restoration is found in who Jesus is. It's found in the forgiveness and the grace and the mercy that Jesus brings, and only in Jesus. He brings complete restoration. Where I want to end today is this. So at the end of that restoration point, then Jesus has this interaction with Peter. It's found in verse 18. And Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, Peter, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. And verse 19 says this: this he said to show by what kind of death he, Peter, was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, follow me. So after Jesus restores Peter, after Jesus gets Peter back into right relationship with him, then he says, okay, Peter, I need you to understand something. I've restored you, and this is what's going to happen. You're going to die for me. Have you ever been at the place where you're walking with Jesus, you're following Jesus, and you want the good things. You want the stuff that other people are experiencing. You got other people who are like, man, I met Jesus like this, and this is what happened, and you're like, that's what I want. But Peter is told, you're going to die for me. You're going to be stretched out in a way that you don't want to be stretched out. Do you realize that following Jesus, that we are called to the very same thing that Peter was called to? Jesus said, if you choose to follow me, you will deny yourself, you will take up your cross daily, and you will follow me. For whoever chooses to save their life will lose it. Whoever chooses to lose their life for my sake will save it. You and I are called to die to ourselves as well. And we see this whole thing with Jesus. We're like, oh, Jesus, yeah, he's wonderful. He saved me. He rescued me. And you go back to what Thomas said. Thomas said, my Lord and my God. He placed himself fully under, submitting himself to Jesus, saying, whatever you want to do with me, I'm there because I see you as Lord and God. And so Jesus, in reconciling Peter, said, you're going to die for me. And then we hear, I believe, the two most important words. Follow me. Follow me. Peter, I've just reconciled you. I just told you what your life is going to look like and how you're going to die. Follow me. Jesus tells you and I, if you choose to follow me, you will deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me. Follow me. Do you follow? Do you really follow Jesus? Or have you completely distanced yourself? Have you completely separated yourself? You may be sitting here this morning. You may be sitting online with us right now. Are you following Jesus? I learned a great lesson about following. We went to South Africa, and I have a picture up here. We went to South Africa, and we went on safari. And we went out looking for the white rhinoceros. We never found him. I'm sure he was out there. In fact, I know he was because we came up on piles of dung that were still steaming. And so our leaders were like, we're very close. And I didn't know whether to be excited about that or to be really worried about that. But in this picture, you'll see two guns. You'll see a couple of our students that have bullets in their hands. And that's all we got. And what our leader said was this, that you are to get in a single file line. You are to stay right behind one another. And you are to follow me. I will be in the front with a gun, and you will have someone behind you with a gun, and you are to not get out of step with us. See, because we didn't see the white rhino, but we saw a multitude of other animals that could have created devastating results for us. Although we did see a baby giraffe, which that was really cute. Could have stomped us probably. But he said, you got to stay in line. Do not get out of line. Follow me, follow me, follow me. And then he said this, if we by chance come upon a lion, sure. If we by chance come upon a lion, stay in single file line. Because he said what would happen is if we all just kind of began dispersing, we would look like a much bigger threat to the lion than if we are in a single file line. And what he was saying to us was, follow me. Your life depends on it. And what Jesus is saying to us and to Peter, follow me. Your life depends on it. Now what's interesting is you go back again to that story in Luke 5 where Jesus gives them an abundant catch of food? Y'all, they're probably around the same area, the same region, the same shore of the Sea of Galilee in both of those stories. And do you know what Jesus said at the beginning of that story in Luke 5? He tells Peter and them, "Come with me, I'll make you fishers of men." And we see in that story that Peter and the other fishermen, it says they leave everything and follow him. It's as if Jesus is reminding them of what it was like to be brought out and to be called into following him before, reminding them of what it was like at the beginning of their story. And there are times that Jesus steps back into our life and he says, I want you to remember what it was like when you lived in sin and then when you made a decision to follow me. I want to remind you of what it's like, that beginning story of going, Jesus, you rescued me, I will follow you. And then you're 30 years into it and he's reminding you again, Jesus, you've rescued me and I will follow you. Jesus, you've rescued me and I follow you. I just want to remind you, I want you to think back to the time that you made a decision to follow Jesus. And I've talked to people throughout my entire ministry, and I've heard this time and time again, and I want to tell you that there's a shortcoming to this statement. There are people that have said, I was raised in the church, so all I've known was God, so I've never made a decision to follow Jesus. No, at some point, you have to make a decision to follow Jesus. And if you've made that decision, I want you to think back to that first time that you made a conscious choice to go, Jesus, I will follow you. Because Jesus is reminding Peter of that as well. Follow me. So Peter's not surprised, or Peter's not taken aback by the fact that Jesus says, this is how you will die. And so he's walking with Jesus, and all of a sudden he looks over his shoulder and he sees John, the beloved. You know, the one who does everything right. And Peter says, what about him? What about him? And Jesus said, essentially, Peter, that's not your business. You follow me. A lot of us have an issue with this. A lot of us are like, yeah, I'm going to follow Jesus, but I see how this person lives, and I see how God interacts with this person, and I see the gifts that this person has. I really want that, or I want to live my life this way, or I want to experience God this way. And some people are over here, and they're lifting their hands, and they're praising God, and they're like, wow, that looks really good. I want to do it that way. But it's not about how other people are doing it. Jesus is saying to you, and Jesus is saying to Peter, don't worry about John, worry about yourself. And then he says to Peter, you follow me. And I want to say to you this morning, and you online, that if you're following Jesus, it's not dependent upon how other people are following Jesus. It's not dependent upon how they experience God, what their gifts are, what their abilities are, what their graces are. It's not comparing yourself to them. It's just following Jesus and staying in line and staying right behind him because your life depends on it. Are you following Jesus?